we were talking about Hive, and I heard you were just talking a little bit about portfolio theory. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, I just feel like, obviously Hive's up like is it up? It's up like 250%, I think, is what I saw over the last
I
like
mean,
30 to
since
60
I was
days.
gonna say it depends on when. Yeah, so I mean, on November, it literally bottomed out November 5th at it closed at 17 cents on November 5th. So we're at 62 cents now, basically 2 months later, like pretty much exactly 2 months later. So, yeah, that's a heck of a run.
Yeah, it's insane. It's well warranted. I think a lot of people were looking at Hive and they were wondering why it wasn't moving. That being said, I kept reminding people as well, that the entire altcoin market, wasn't really moving much.
Uh,
It wasn't just Hive, and it still isn't. It's obviously Hive's now moved a lot. There's still a lot of altcoins that haven't moved much. I mean, you look at like Ethereum, the Ethereum Bitcoin ratio, and that is pretty immovable. I mean, it's at 0.035. It's been really just hovering, and it's super low. So, that's pretty low relative to where Ethereum usually sits, in Bitcoin terms. So. So yeah, I think, I saw a lot of negative sentiment about Hive, and you see it about most altcoins out there because, like I said, most haven't moved much, but Bitcoin is obviously at 100K. So yeah, I think the thing is though, what you see is sentiment eventually bottoms out. It gets so bad, people are like, "Wow, this thing is never going to go back up," and it's at that moment where the turning point comes. So you let the weakest hands will sell, and then the turning point comes right after that. So, when you hear from people that they sold, right before something went up, those are the kind of like the final people to get out before something goes up. Um, and that's a pretty common phenomenon in really everything that you can trade. So I think it's just pretty obvious that uh, I think it's pretty obvious that Hive deserves to go up. Um, in terms of technology, in terms of, it as a cryptocurrency. I think most of us just kind of expected it. I managed to scoop up a lot of Hive over the last few years, while it's been down. So, we use with Inleo, we use a ton of Hive. And with all the onboarding lately, we've been using even more Hive than we usually do. So our need for Hive power continues to grow. Um, and obviously, in terms of value, it was a good time to buy. So I see Mcoin said, "How do perpetuals affect the price?" So he's talking about the perpetual futures. So if you haven't been following what's happened to Hive and why it's up, essentially what happened is Hive got listed on a bunch of perp exchanges. So a perpetual future is basically an options contract, but they don't expire and they don't settle back into the underlying asset. So they're
mm.
just a continually traded thing, and a short, or whether you go short or long, you can hold it forever. That's why it's called perpetual. Um, and there's essentially just a funding rate, and that funding rate kind of determines, the insurance premium, if you will, of the perpetual contract. So when you trade any derivative contract, there's some sort of premium, and with perpetuals, it's a funding rate. That funding rate has been something that's really interesting to watch because it's been, and we were talking about this pre-show, but it's been going as high as 2% every 4 hours, which is, and that's negative 2%. So essentially what that means is if it's at negative 2%, then every 4 hours, the shorts have to pay the longs 2% of their entire position. So that APR comes out to, I think, like, what is it, 4,500% yearly. So, the amount of capital that you can essentially make by just being long and getting paid that funding rate is huge. The question is, you can't just sit here and go long right now because Hive's already up 3x essentially, um, from where it was a few months ago. And if you go long now, what if it goes back down to 25 cents or 20 cents or 30 cents even? You lose half your stack. So, it's an interesting game. It's a game of cat and mouse, really. And we've got Cat here to explain it to you.
That's funny.